Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome to another marvelous edition of Barnes & Noble Midday Mystery. I am your host for today, USA Today bestselling author Hank Phillippi Ryan. I'm the author of 14 novels of suspense. My newest novel is casually displayed on the door behind me, The House Guest, and I hope you will look for that. It's sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise. But I am so honored to be here today to celebrate Pub Day with two marvelous authors. And from the miracle of technology, I am coming to you from Boston, and Liselle Sambury from Atlanta, though she's from Canada, and Natasha Preston from East Anglia. And so many of you are here today to celebrate their marvelous new books. How are you both? Welcome, welcome.
Very good. Thank
Hi,
you.
good, thank you.
Happy Pub Day. Are you excited?
Yeah,
Super
always
excited.
exciting.
Well, so many people are here to celebrate with you. Let me tell you, if you're not familiar with Liselle and with Natasha, let me quickly introduce you so you know who you're talking to. Then we'll talk about these two fabulous new books and take your questions. So many of you have sent in questions, and we'll try to get to all of them. If you also want to put a question in the Q&A module, do that. I see you're already doing that. Yep, you know your stuff. And we will try to get to those as well. But we just really want to talk about the books with Natasha Preston. Hey, Natasha, which it must be so much later in the UK. Natasha Preston, I'll read you quickly, is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Cellar, The Cabin, Awake, You Will Be Mine, The Lost, and The Twin. A UK native, she discovered her love of writing when she shared a story online and hasn't looked back. She enjoys writing romance, thrillers, gritty YA, and the occasional serial killer, she says. You can visit Natasha online on natashapreston.com, and you can follow her on all of your socials. You know how to find people online. Welcome, Natasha. And her newest book is The Island. You saw the amazing cover as the show started with that amazing roller coaster, which is Sin. Do you have that, Natasha? Hold it up.
Oh, yeah.
It is amazing. Wonderful book. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Liselle Sambury, welcome, Liselle. Liselle Sambury is the Trinidadian Canadian author of Governor General's Literary Awards finalist Blood Like Magic and the sequel Blood Like Fate. Her work spans multiple genres from fantasy to sci-fi, horror, and more. In her free time, how do you have free time? She shares helpful tips for upcoming writers and details her publishing journey through a YouTube channel dedicated to demystifying the sometimes complicated business of being an author. Sometimes complicated, always complicated. Her newest book is Delicious Monsters, which you will absolutely love. So I'm going to stop talking so you two can start talking. Liselle, let's start with you. Tell us about Delicious Monsters.
Yeah, so Delicious Monsters is about two teen girls who are navigating the treacherous past of a mysterious mansion 10 years apart. We have Daisy, who can see the dead, who is starting to think that the mansion she and her mother inherited might have just as many secrets as her mom. And then we also have Brittany, who is not only trying to uncover the truth about what happened 10 years ago, she is also chasing an opportunity to expose her mother's lies. And the events in both timelines are propelling them towards confronting the most dangerous monsters of all, those that hide in plain sight.
Okay, I just got goosebumps, and I know you all did too. I've read this book. It's amazing. It's chilling. It's haunting. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We do want to talk about where this idea came from and how you developed it so gorgeously. Natasha, your book is different but similar, and it'll be fun to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about The Island.
Yeah, so The Island is set on this private secluded island. This rich man, billionaire, who's opened like an exclusive amusement park, and he's invited 6 influencers along to endorse the park and shout it out. So they arrive and everything's going great until they find in the morning one of them is missing. His body turns up and they realize that there's no way off the island, so it's sort of a race against time to find a way out or get help to come in.
It is so chilling. I was turning the pages as fast as I could of The Island, and I'd love to know more about your voices. It's just so interesting because you would never mistake one of your books for the other. Your voices are so pure and beautiful and unique. Liselle, the voices of your characters and you, it's haunting, it's mesmerizing, it's touching, it's heartbreaking. How do those characters' voices emerge in your writing? How do you do that?
So it really depends on the character. So I have two perspectives. So I have Daisy, and then I have Brittany investigating 10 years later. And when I went to write Brittany, her voice came right away because I just had a really good sense of her attitude. She's kind of like the sort of person that, takes nothing from no one, and she's not afraid to get in there and to be assertive.
Yeah,
Whereas,
I love when we meet Brittany, she says,
yeah,
imagine Brittany. Well, I'm not that, it's
yeah.
just, and we get her so totally. And then Daisy's very different.
Yeah, Daisy is very different. So they have similar experiences in some way, but they're at very different stages in those. And for Daisy, it was kind of hard in the beginning to get a good grasp of her character because she is kind of a character that in many ways is like acting very aloof, and she kind of acts like there's a lot of things that she doesn't care about when she actually does care about them. And so it's a little bit more complicated to get her voice on the page. And so for me, that was kind of like getting used to doing it and going back and doing my revising and really like getting into her head and thinking about what the reader is going to get from her, and then also how she's going to interact with other people publicly, because in some ways it's a little bit different sometimes. She's doing a
Well,
little bit more shielding.
she does see dead people. That does
Yes,
make a little bit of a difference. That
that too.
strange,
That too.
strange to write.
Um, Kind of, but kind of not. I think I'm used to writing things that are, a little bit fantasy edged. And so it's still paranormal. And so for me, it was really just kind of figuring out how she's going to interact with them. And she doesn't particularly like being able to see ghosts, and she doesn't particularly like dead people. So, but it's something that she's forced to interact with because she's not a super happy person, and they are attracted to unhappy people. And she finds herself kind of in this situation in which they're being attracted to her, and it's just making her more sad and more
Well,
upset.
I mean,
She has to have all these strategies.
it's you did it so well, and you made these gorgeous rules for it, and now I completely look at the world a different way. It's really, really chilling. And Natasha, your main characters are hip and contemporary and really smart. And I love how they, especially Paisley, imparts this information to people. She knows her stuff, she's smart, and yet they find themselves in this really desperate and dangerous situation. Talk a little bit about how you created them, especially her, and how her voice came out.
See, Liselle said that all so beautifully, and they're just all in my head. If that makes, I think of a character and I think of who they are, and then for me, the character is the easiest part to write because they just appear and they write themselves. It might sound a little crazy, but they are just always there, and they are the ones sort of propelling the story forward.
Yes, but and I do know exactly what you mean as an author. Sometimes on the days that I'm feeling lucky and like channeling the character, it sort of feels like they're coming out. But you have this great ensemble cast. There is a lead character, but you have this great ensemble cast of the people who are really stuck on this scary island. When you're writing, how do you differentiate among the people? I mean, I know their voices come out, but do you see them in your mind's eye and you're just picturing what they're doing and saying?
Yeah, completely. I can see it, it's like a movie in my head. I can see exactly what they're going to do, what they want to say, and sometimes I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, that's silly. But that is them, and that's how they would act and react and what they would do. So it's all very, I don't know, it just naturally comes out, despite what I may want for them.
I mean, do you, how important was it to you that the characters we know each one by exactly what they do. How important was that for you to keep those? I mean, there's the crime girl, and there's the makeup person, and there's the travel person. Talk a little bit about how you figured that out.
So I wanted them all to be quite different. So then, when the danger comes, they all have to find a way to work together. And they all have very different ideas of how to do things, but and that was quite important, because obviously you need them to go off separately and then be placed into danger alone. So yeah, I knew that they all needed to have their own ideas, but ultimately they had to find a way to work together to, get out of their situation.
I mean, it is, I love when you talk about the movie in your mind, because it is the most cinematic book that I've read in a long time. I could really, really see that. You both use these marvelous settings as very pivotal in your novels. Liselle, talk a little bit about this house and how you decided to have it be one of the linchpins of your story.
Yeah, I think for me, I went into it very much wanting to, build upon the idea of the haunted house. And so I had decided on that pretty much before I started anything. And so then it was really kind of just deciding how the house would work and how it would function, because I think you simplistically think, well, a haunted house is like a house and there's like ghosts in it or something, but there are actually like very different rules and very different ways that houses can work in different stories. And I really wanted mine to do something different, so I had to think a lot about how it was going to function in relation to Daisy and what she can do, and the fact that she can see dead people. But then there's also the history of the house and like who has lived there before, because to me that's also a big part of that haunting feeling of it. Part of it is, of course, supernatural things, but a large part of it is who has come before and what have they put into their house and what stories do they have sitting in the walls and what is baking in there that can come out that the character can discover. And so it was a lot of building that up and thinking about the history of the house and like, how did it get there and what happened? And then that kind of expands to the setting, because it's set in Kenogami area, which is near Timmins, which is where I reside. And it's very much like a mining town. And so when I thought of how this house came to be, I had to go back and think of that and like, how could this big mansion come into this? And it's, well, if you have mining money and gold money, you can build a big house for yourself. And what all comes down the line from that? So it's kind of a combination of many things to create this house.
Is it a real house? Is it based on a real house?
So it is not a real house. So it's based on a real area, but I pretty much just kind of like plopped a mansion in there. I was like, what if this was here? But it was not a real house.
I bet you can see that house in your head. I mean, I certainly could in reading the book. Do you feel that you know it now? And what do you think about that?
I think for me, I'm one of those people that I actually have a lot of trouble picturing things physically in my head. And so I always see like bits and pieces of stuff. So for me, it's really like the feeling of the house and the feeling of the mansion and everything that goes into it. But like, if somebody said, hey, can you draw a picture of this? Not really. That's why I have all these different reference photos that I put together and then I described from there. But like the idea, like what Natasha was talking about with the movie in your head, never been for me. It's floating people. It's floating people everywhere. And then I like work really hard on crafting something solid for the page.
I love that. And the other thing that's good about it, that all of these viewers, and look how many people are here. Hello to all of you in the comments. It's so nice to see you. People, your readers can create the house in the movie in their minds and have it be exactly the way they want it to be. And that's kind of cool as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And Natasha, you create this other whole amazing atmosphere of this theme park. And it's either terrifying or glorious, depending on what happens. Talk a little bit about how you came up with this place and how you came, I mean, it's very Agatha Christie-esque, although it's contemporary, obviously. It's sort of like Survivor and sort of like Agatha Christie, all and Disney World for danger. Talk a little bit about how that all got put together and where that came from in your head.
Yeah, so I really like writing books where you are trapped and there's no way out. So I've done cellars and buildings, but I want to explore the idea of having this huge park. There are so many places that you can go on it, but you cannot get off of it. And so you have all like these rides, and it's pretty gothic-y looking theme park. So there's all these creepy rides, and I quite like that dark atmosphere.
Mhm.
And the fact that you're just plonked in the middle of the sea and there's no one coming for you.
But Natasha, it is so gorgeously precise the way you describe the main house and the rides and the wharf and the boats and every single part, every room, every weapon, every curtain is beautiful. How do you do that? I mean, did you draw pictures? Do you have pictures? Again, is this the movie in your mind taking you through?
Yeah, I'm terrible. I can't draw. Nothing good comes from me drawing. It's literally all in my head. I dream a lot as well, actually. Quite a few of my books have started as a dream. But yeah, I just see it. It just flash and it's there.
How did you decide to name it?
The title of the book, or the island?
The Island.
Yeah, most of mine start with the now, so it's all this something. And obviously they're just in an island.
No, but I mean, it's called Jagged Island. How did you
Sorry,
decide?
yes, the island. So I saw the rocks, the face of the island. As you come up to it, you just see like these rocks right in front of you, and they're all like jagged and gnarly, and like if you was to hit it, you would not do well.
Well, it's incredibly atmospheric. Both of the books are incredibly atmospheric. I'm looking over here at the time and I'm just watching it tick by, and I have so many questions for you. And I know that your viewers have so many questions for you, and I hope you get to look at the chat because they're just coming in like crazy, and we'll look at those at some point as well. Can I ask you, we've talked a little bit about what the plots of your books are, but there's so much more in your novels than this propulsive, compelling plot. There's family, and there's friendship, and there's our place in society, and there's so much genuine emotion coming through them. When you picture your readers, Liselle, what are you hoping they take from this book? I mean, it's so much more than a story, both of them.
Yeah, I think for me, the book and what I'm really trying to express with the book is I want teens that read it to feel like they have the right to their own autonomy and to choose how they want to go forward, to choose not only what you might want to do in your life, but also to choose how you define your relationships with other people. Because there's so many characters that have these different familial relationships, and some of them are like more complicated, some of them are not great, some of them are positive. But it's really, to me, about the characters making a choice of how do I want to proceed in this. And I think as a teen, it can be very easy to feel like that's not your decision, or that's not your choice, or that's not something that you have the power to decide. And really what I want with the book is to show that you very much do. And that's for you, and that's your own personal choice. And it's not about other people deciding that for you. It's for you coming into yourself and learning I can make these choices on my own, and they're mine and they belong to me, and what other people think about them is irrelevant.
I mean, it's really empowering, I think, to read about someone else's journey to their power, if you know what I mean, because you're solving someone else's problems and seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And yet you think, oh, I've felt that way too. I've been worried too. I've been nervous too. I felt lonely too, and sad too.
Yeah, exactly.
When your readers close this book, do you want them to feel stronger, or how would you describe it?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think when people close the book, when I put the book into their hands, I've passed over how they feel about it. So however they feel about the book when they finish is however they feel about it. And I think, even finishing a book and like feeling not necessarily immediate positive feeling doesn't necessarily mean it has been the wrong book or a bad book. Sometimes it's a thing of thinking more about it and processing and all of that.
Exactly.
So
And I
when
think,
they close the book, it's up to them.
no, I hear you. It's just, sometimes I mean, I think at the end of the book, tears came to my eyes a little bit. And, you feel changed. You feel changed when you read a good book. And I think definitely in Delicious Monsters, you will change. That's part of the wonderful process of it. And Natasha, your characters are hip, as I said, they're smart, and they have a problem that they need to solve. And they each bring their own knowledge. They each bring their own knowledge to it. What are you really talking about in this book? What do you want your readers to think about a little bit?
So they were all strangers before they arrived on this island, so they didn't know each other at all. So it's really about them working together and getting to know each other and caring about someone actually that you probably wouldn't choose to spend time with, because they're all very different. But as you go along, they're risking their lives to save each other, and they're trying to help each other out. So it's that coming together.
And I think that in this book, in your book, which is so exciting and such a page turner, and there's no way of knowing what's going to happen. You just can't wait to find out. There is a sense, though, of values and learning what's important, and what's on the surface may not matter, and learning that there's more to life than sort of making shallow decisions.
Yeah, I think they had to strip back a bit and get quite real with each other and themselves to solve this problem.
And why do you think that putting them on this inescapable theme park island was a good crucible for that?
I think it's kind of do or die, isn't it? If you want to survive and you want to get off, you need to work together. You need to put the work in and figure it out and work as a team.
And whether it's the island or whether it's just your regular real life, we're all sort of on this journey. Whether it's in Lizelle's book or whether it's in your book, we're all sort of on this journey, having to make these kinds of decisions that sometimes feel like they're life or death to us, and learn to rely on ourselves a little bit. I get that from both of your books. It's so marvelous. I'm looking at the time. Oh no, okay, we better go. We better go to audience questions, and you all will not believe how many questions there are here. Everybody is so excited about your books. You should look at the comments. Let me ask you, see how many we can get to of these. Tiff Parker was asking, did you research hauntings near and around Ontario? If so, where did you go? Did you research hauntings?
So I didn't research hauntings because sometimes I want to build on like a real life thing, and I want to do stuff like that, and I will. But in this case, I was like, I want to build my own thing independent from what is existing. So it was mostly just like researching the space. So like going there, I took a lot of pictures, I took a lot of video, and then also some sort of historical things about Timmins as well. So I wanted to make sure that, because I know it's a gold mining town, but I wanted to learn a bit more about that. And I had to figure out the timeline to make sure it would work with like when the family might own this and how that might work. And then some like very technical research, like, can you get good Wi-Fi out in Kenogami area?
Very important.
Yeah, things like that. So less like the folklore history and more just general.
I didn't know Timmins was real, so I was surprised.
Oh, yeah.
To hear you say that. See, I learned something. Well, let's just take Tiff Parker's question and ask Natasha a version of that. Did you research theme parks? Do you know how they work and how the underground is and how the surveillance cameras work and how the rides work?
So yeah, I did a little, just as you said, to know how it would work. But I really wish I'd gone to a private island now. It was a missed opportunity.
Definitely. It would have been, well, you can go now. You can definitely go now. What is the thought process, asks Joanna Jordan. It's an interesting question. What is your thought process when deciding a plot for a new novel? I guess that sort of means, how do you know it's a good idea?
For me, I don't necessarily. I'm pretty much picking the idea that I'm the most excited about and that I have enough ideas and material that I think, oh, I can make a full book with this. But I don't necessarily know that that's gonna work. Like I've written books before and I've written like the whole book, I've written a giant portion of it and been like, this is bad. And I've had to move on from it. So
You have parts of books that you just stopped?
yeah, I have a lot of those.
Do you, Natasha, have
I
parts
do,
of
yeah, and exactly the same. Yeah, it kind of got to hope, haven't you, that it's good when you start going.
Yeah.
So, and we have questions from, I mean, I'm fascinated by this because are you sad when you let them go? I mean, do you ever come back to them? You're both such good writers. Is it because you realize it's not going to work or what?
Sometimes it's so frustrating that I'm not sad at all to stop doing it
Like that.
because I've been trying to make it work and it's in fact not going to work. And sometimes that's just like the plot, like in one book, I had a big plot twist that I was so excited about, but then the big plot twist ruined a bunch of things in the beginning. It just like affected the experience. And so I was like, this isn't going to work. But the big plot twist was the only thing I was really excited about in that book. So then I was fine to move on. And sometimes I go back to ideas and I'll like rechange them. Sometimes I'll take characters from, a so-called failed project and I'll put them into a new one. It all depends.
I mean, we always talk about how there's no wasted writing.
Mm-hmm.
You always learn something, even from the things that you discard. Do you feel that way, Natasha?
I do, yeah. I pretty much just, it's in the bin and it's gone, but you do learn from it. And next time, maybe when you're writing, you don't write yourself into like a hole or, you can do it better next time.
And it's interesting too, because when you have a book that works, like Delicious Monsters or like The Island, how does it feel when you're writing it, when you're thinking, this is going to work? I think this will be good. How does that feel to you, Natasha?
Relief.
Thank you. At what point do you know that you've got something as good as The Island?
Oh gosh. Probably when I'm about halfway and I'm like, okay, I can get here, now I can get further on.
I think about that sometimes. I tell my husband that when I'm writing, it's like sending an ocean liner across the ocean, and then it has to come back.
Yeah.
And I've said to him, the ocean liner is turning for home now, and this is going to work. Liselle, how did you know that Delicious Monsters was going to be as great as it is?
I mean, I will know and then I'll unknow, and then I'll know and then I'll unknow. So, there are points in writing the book where I was like, this is really good, like this is really special. And then it's time to send it to my agent. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's the worst book I've ever written. And then she likes it. And I'm like, okay, everything is good again. And then it's time to try and sell it to a publisher. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's the worst thing. So I'll go back and forth. And then eventually I just kind of at some point reach a piece where I'm fine. So it's back and forth for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm looking at questions here because so many people are asking, do you know the ending? Do you know the beginning? Do you know the middle? How do you put it all together? One person is saying, McKenna Whitaker is saying, when do you know who the bad guy is? And Cheryl Klein says, do you enjoy drawing up your protagonist or your bad guy, bad girl more? Talk about the villains. Do you start with the villain? Natasha, did you know who the villain was? And I know we're being really careful here.
No, you know what, I do plan who it is, but as I'm writing, it probably changes 2 or 3 times. So by the time I'm 3/4 of the way through, I'm like, I actually don't know who the bad guy is. I have no idea until I get to the end. I'm like, okay, someone has to do this now.
So how far along are you when you finally figure it out?
So The Island probably, I don't know, I was getting towards the end and I'm thinking, I need to know this. So some of books I get to the end and then I figure it out, and others it comes a little earlier.
Do you ever worry that, I mean, I do this from personal experience. Do you ever worry that you've written a mystery that you can't solve since you don't know who the bad guy is?
It's a mystery to me most of the time as well.
Exactly. What about you, Liselle?
I mean, for me, I usually have several antagonists in a book.
Mhm.
It's hard for me in a book to have like one like straight villain. I was like, usually it's like multiple sort of antagonistic characters, but I do usually know pretty early on, just because of the way I plan out these sorts of stories, is I like start thinking of like the twists and turns in the story first. And so then usually I have a good idea of like who the antagonist is going to be, because they're like involved in the twist. And I have a very I have a pattern of hiding who the antagonist is in my stories. And so it just ends up that because the twist is the reveal, I've already thought of it really early on. So I usually know like quite a bit in the beginning. It's my journey / struggle is more in like the, how do I reveal this in a satisfying way?
Yes, I think that that's really important, because if you tell it too soon, then it gives it away. If you tell it too late, people have already possibly figured out. So part of the fun is the joy of having the timing of it be just right. Someone is asking a really interesting question, and that Alina Ellis asks, what makes you write scary novels? Why did you pick scary? And do you use the word scary or intense or tense or emotional or surprising? Natasha, why did you pick this sort of feeling, and how would you just describe what that word is?
I guess tense I would probably use, but I've always loved thrillers and mystery and horror since I was probably too young to be watching horror and stuff. So it's always been my favorite. It's always my go-to. I love that. I love the mystery and the danger.
You love the danger. Is it the danger or the figuring your way out of the danger?
Probably the danger.
When did you, I mean, when you were little, you were talking about the books that you read or what the shows that you saw that you were maybe too little for. Do you remember anything that was pivotal or formative that still haunts you?
I just remember being excited by, and obviously I was completely safe, so that was a bit different. But yeah, being in a situation that you can't really control and it's scary, and you are sometimes just, fighting for your life.
But it's interesting now that you chose to be an author, and then we'll get to you, Liselle, but I'm just sort of on this for a second, that you chose to be an author where you would think you were in control of the situation, in control of the story that you're writing. But the way you've described your writing process, maybe you're not really in control.
Not in control
It's
of
your
anything.
character. Now, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, sometimes when I don't know the villain, it's because they haven't told me who they are yet. And you have a lot of different people who, oh, it could be you, because you kind of, they're doing all these things like, oh, so it could be you or you, but I don't know until usually close to the end, when it becomes clear that, yeah, you're the bad guy.
That's how I do it too. I don't know what happens in my novels until I sit down and find out what happens.
Yeah.
That's part of the magic for me as well. Liselle, what made you choose scary, tense, conflicting, emotional kinds of novels? I mean, the cover of Delicious Monsters is terrifying. You all go to Barnes and Noble and look at the cover of Delicious Monsters. You will absolutely be chilled by it. What draws you to that?
Yeah, I'm the same as Natasha. I also like just grew up really loving those sorts of like shows and movies, and like those sorts of tense things and the dangerous moments. And like when you had said, do you like the danger or like figuring out how to get out of it? And she'd said danger, I was like, yep, exactly the same. Those tense moments and the lead up to it and all of that is just, those are always exciting things that I was interested in. And continue to be interested in. So I've always really enjoyed that. It was just kind of, this was the book where I finally thought, oh, maybe I'll try and write that. Though I did do a little bit of that in Blood Like Magic and Blood Like Fate, but less consciously.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you remember a book that was formative to you as a little kid? Did you always want to be a writer?
I didn't always want to be a writer or like thought of writing as like a job or a thing you could do. I just happened to write. And at some point down the line, I thought, oh, maybe I'd like to try and get this published. And then I was like, oh, I guess I would be being a writer. But until then, like my reading experience felt very separate from my writing experience. But I did read a lot of Darren Shan's work when I was growing up. And he wrote like they were very like gross out sort of things, like a lot of gross things happen in them, but they were like scary and they were really interesting and they were, fantasy paranormal, but I loved them because of all the like creepy, gross stuff that happened and all the like little horror aspects and the fact that I couldn't guess what would happen when they went into a dangerous situation. He wasn't afraid to get rid of some characters, and so I didn't know who was going to come out of it, whereas a lot of books that I read, you kind of know this character and this character are going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen to them.
And I love that. I love when the author is brave. I
Mhm.
love when the author does something that just makes you absolutely gasp. And I have to tell you that I am in awe of how you figured out how dead people behave and what they do and what they like, even down to how dead dogs behave. I mean, your brain is really complicated and you gotta love it. You will absolutely love this book. And Natasha, did you always want to be a writer? Did you think about that?
Not till quite late, actually. I was in my well, I say late 20s isn't late, my early 20s, and it was just writing online, and I just found that I really enjoyed it. So that's how I got started.
What was the very first thing you wrote?
The Cellar.
That was the first thing that was the first thing you tried?
Yeah.
And you just, it's either super confident or super naive to think you could just write that. What was in your heart and mind when you did that? Just joy?
Yeah, it was just a hobby. It was just for fun. I figured, I had this idea in my head and I ran with it. So
That you're amazing. That you're both are quite astonishing. We have a lot of questions as time ticks away about your writing life and procedures. Lawrence says, how many hours a week do you write? Aaron says, how long did it take you to finish your book? Those kinds of processy questions. Do you write late at night? Do you write early in the morning? Do you write longhand or with the computer? How do you do it, Natasha?
So I write, my children are at school, so I don't really get to write quite a lot during the day. And I will probably read the whole internet for about an hour, and then I will write a few words. And I generally go for 2,000 words a day, and then I'm pretty happy.
2,000 words a day is a lot. So your brain is really moving. I mean, there's another question about writer's block. I'm trying to find who asked that question because I remember somebody did. Do you believe in writer's block? Do you get that? Do you ever have that? Or what do you think that is?
Yeah, I guess there are times where I know I need to step away because I've looked at it too much and I'm probably not seeing things that are pretty obvious. So I know that I need to take a break. And when I come back to it, generally I will get going and pick it up.
And that was Marsha Bullock's question. I found it, Marsha. I know. What about you, Liselle? Do you ever have a bad writing day?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's similar to Natasha. It's more just sometimes I'm, trying to think of a solution to a problem in the book, and I know I can't think of it right then. I'm trying and it's not quite happening, and so I usually then step away. I take a break. I'll not work, or I'll work on something different. And usually it'll come to me at some point later in time. I've always been lucky in that it's been like the day of or the next day. And so I've not had, a long period of block, but it's usually kind of like a signal of, okay, you have to go away and think about this a little bit harder or separately, or not think about it at all for a little bit. And then when you come back to think about it, you might have something new.
What I love hearing from both of you is, I think writer's block, what we talk about is writer's block, is like fear. And I don't think you have fear. I mean, it sounds like you both have sort of confidence that you'll figure it out at some point. It'll come to you, or that you'll have the confidence to say this one just isn't going to work. Do you have fun writing? Is it fun for you, Natasha?
It is fun. Yeah, it's not always fun when you are in those moments where you're like, oh, come on, like just do it, just work through it. And usually it comes to me at like 3 a.m. I'm like, oh, that's what I need to do. But yeah, I do enjoy it.
What about you, Liselle? Do you enjoy it too?
Yeah, I really like it. There, as Natasha said, sometimes there are less fun times, or there are some parts of the process that I like way more than others. But overall, I really love writing.
And speaking of loving it, congratulations to you two as our time ticks away. Congratulations to you two on your pub days, talking about loving it. You look at all, there's maybe 100 people here today, all of whom are applauding your novels, and either they've read them or they cannot wait to read them. How do you feel about that, Natasha?
Oh, I love the readers. They're amazing. And every time somebody reaches out to you, it's just incredible to know that they've, picked up your book and they've read it and they've taken time out of their day to reach out to you. It's amazing.
It never gets old, does it? It's
Yeah.
just so much fun. How about you, Liselle?
Yeah, exactly. Readers are great. It's always like so exciting when people are also excited about the book because, they started as a little idea in my head and now has grown. And it's always really exciting and fulfilling that people want to read the words and are enjoying them and are having a good time doing it.
I love that idea that they started as this little idea in your head and they just bloomed and blossomed into these marvelous books. And you should see all the little hearts that are coming up on the side of the screen. It's amazing to see the response. See, there they go, the response from all of your readers and fans. We are out of time, you all. I cannot believe this. The time just flew by. All of you, and I look over here, I'm looking at the comments, and they're saying you are one of my favorite authors. Thank you. I really enjoyed this discussion. This has been a real treat, and you two are quite marvelous. Delicious Monsters and The Island. Let me tell you all that you have to know that if you bought a ticket that included The Island with a signed book plate and or Delicious Monsters with a signed book plate, the book will be delivered to you within 8 to 10 days, and that time will fly by. They are getting ready. They are on the way. You will get your books. If you didn't order a book, easy. You can go to barnesandnoble.com or your favorite Barnes & Noble and pick one up, not right this second, but in about 1 minute when we are finished. Thank you all. Darling readers and viewers for coming today. And thank you for Barnes & Noble for inviting us to let me introduce Liselle and Natasha to you and their marvelous books. One last word from each of you. Liselle, how did you like today?
It was great. Thank you so much to everyone that came and hung out. And thank you, Hank, for moderating.
It's been so much fun to talk to you both. Natasha, one last word.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to you two. You've been amazing, and to everybody watching and sending all got the love.
Oh, you've got the love. You've got the love from all of us. And all of you get all the love from Barnes & Noble and from the three of us. Thank you so much for coming here today. And we will see you at an upcoming Barnes & Noble Midday Mystery. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.